Check this out. BCM here, bringing you another Commander deck tech. Today we are looking at Tex-Toxrill the Corrosive, or Gary the Snail, or as I like to call this deck, Doom Slugs. This is a high-end Dimir Control deck where we're gonna capitalize on killing off our opponent's creatures, no matter how big they are, and we're going to win the game very quickly by controlling everything our opponent does. Whether it be them creating creatures, drawing cards, searching their library, basically every aspect of the game we're going to control. So, let's get right into it. Tex-Toxrill himself is a very large 7/7 slug horror, and every single end step we get to put a slime counter on each creature we don't control, and those creatures will get -1/-1 for each slime counter. And whenever a creature that had a slime counter on it would be put into a graveyard, we get to create a 1/1 black slug, and we're going to use these slug tokens to generate value for us. By activating Tex-Toxrill, we get to sacrifice a slug to draw a card. So we're going to gain value off creatures going to the graveyard and drawing cards. So let's get right into it. First up is all the creatures. We are a prominent Thassa's Oracle deck. That way we can just win the game on the spot very quickly. Now we're going to use Maha, its Feathers Knight, to ensure that our opponent's creatures will always be the lowest toughness to kill them as fast as possible. Because we're focused on putting counters on permanents, we're going to utilize the proliferation, especially with Thrumming Bird. Whenever we deal combat damage to a player, we get to proliferate. Now we have a whole bunch of creatures that are going to give our opponent's creatures that we're going to use to kill off, and the creatures themselves are going to have way better value than our opponents. So we have Slaughter Specialist. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent will create a 1/1 human. Whenever any creature is put into a opponent's graveyard, we get to put a +1 counter on Slaughter Specialist. So we can proliferate the +1 counters to make Slaughter Specialist even bigger. Now we have Sludge Monster. This is kind of like a mini Tex-Toxrill. Sludge Monster will put slime counters when it enters the battlefield or attacks, and then every single non-horror creature with a slime counter on it will lose all abilities and have base power and toughness of 2. Now we have Clackbridge Troll. This is a very large 8/8 with trample and haste. When it enters the battlefield, target opponent will create 3 0/1 goats, and then every single combat, if our opponent can't deal with a very large creature, they can sacrifice a creature to tap down Clackbridge Troll, but if they do that, we get to gain 3 life and draw a card. Now we have Hunted Phantasm. This is going to create 5 1/1 red goblins for our opponents when it enters, but it's a 4/6 that's unblockable. Because we're creating tokens or sacrificing tokens, we have Mirkwood Bats. That way, every time we do this, we're going to have our opponents lose 1 life, just to make sure our opponents lose even more life. We have Massacre Worm. This is going to enter and give every single creature our opponents control -2/-2. So they're probably going to die immediately. Whenever any creature is put into our opponent's graveyard, that player will lose 2 life. Now we have some creatures that are going to punish our opponents for drawing cards, searching their library, or just basically playing the game. So we have Orcish Bowmasters. Whenever any opponent draws a additional card, we get to deal 1 damage to any target, and then we get to create a Orc Amass token. And what better one than Sheoldred the Apocalypse? Whenever we draw a card, we get to gain life, and whenever a opponent draws a card, they're going to lose 2 life. Now we have Massacre Girl. This one is very unique because every creature we control is going to have Wither, so it'll deal damage in the form of -1 counters that we can proliferate. But whenever any creature a opponent controls is put into a graveyard, if its toughness was 1 or less, we get to draw a card. Just to punish our opponents from searching, we have Opposition Agent. If our opponents would search, we get to control that search instead. And if our opponents like drawing cards, we're going to shut that down with Notion Thief. If they would draw additional cards, we get to draw that card instead. And now we kind of have a Swiss Army knife. We have Yawgmoth, Thran Physician. This will have protection from humans, but we can pay a life, sacrifice a creature, put a -1 counter on any target creature, and draw a card. Or if we need to proliferate these counters, we can pay 2, discard a card, and then proliferate. Now, to punish our opponents even more, we have Talion, the Kindly Lord. When Talion enters the battlefield, we get to choose a number between 1 and 10, and then whenever any opponent casts a spell with that chosen mana value, or have a creature with that same power or toughness, that player is going to lose 2 life, and we draw a card. Now we have kind of a aristocrat style where we're going to gain value whenever creatures go to the graveyard. So we have Ayara, first a Locthwain. Because most of our creatures are black, whenever Ayara or another black creature enters the battlefield, each opponent will lose a life and we gain a life. Or we can activate her to sacrifice a black creature to draw cards. Of course, we have Blood Artist and Zulaport Cutthroat. Whenever creatures we control or creatures our opponents control are put into a graveyard, they're going to lose life and we're going to gain life. Now, in case we need to copy any creature or planeswalker, we have Spark Double. Because Toxrill is a horror, we have the best one out there. We have Hullbreaker Horror. This is a 7/8 with flash. It can't be countered, and then whenever we cast a spell, we can either return a spell that's on the stack back to its owner's hand. This gets around spells that can't be countered, or we can return any non-land permanent back to its owner's hand. That's really, really fun. We do have 3 planeswalkers that are going to help us out. So we have Narset, Parter of Veils. This is going to punish our opponents for drawing additional cards. And we can -2 Narset to look at the top 4 cards of our library. Then we can put a non-creature, non-land from among those into our hand, and the rest go on the bottom. Now, to prevent our opponents from searching, we have Ashiok Dreamrender. This will also help by exiling our opponent's graveyards as well. Now, to stay on the proliferation theme, we have Vraska, Betrayal Sting. This one is absolutely insane. We can 0 her to draw a card, we lose a life, and then we proliferate. Or if our opponents manage to get a certain creature, we can -2 Vraska and turn that creature into a treasure token. If we get to her ultimate of -9, our opponents are going to get 9 poison counters, and we only have to proliferate 1 time, and our opponents lose the game. Okay, let's get into the instants. We have our Vampiric Tutor. That way we can go get whatever card we need. We have a whole bunch of counterspells. So we have Swan Song. This will counter a enchantment, instant, or sorcery. It will give the controller a 2/2 bird, but we're probably just going to kill that off anyway. We have Mana Drain, one of the most powerful counterspells in Magic. Now we have my personal favorite with Arcane Denial. This will counter the spell, and then at the beginning of the next upkeep, we get to draw a card, and the spell's controller will draw 2 cards. So if we're already punishing our opponents for drawing cards, of course we have the iconic Force of Will and Force of Negation, and good old Counterspell. Now, if we need to deal with our opponent's entire board, we have Cyclonic Rift. Black and blue kind of have a hard time dealing with enchantments, so we have Withering Torment. This will destroy a target creature or enchantment. Now we have some that are going to deal with our opponent's creatures by turning them into smaller creatures with no abilities. So we have Sudden Spoiling. This is split second, so it'll end the stack. We have Polymorphous Jest. They'll all become 1/1 blue frogs with no abilities. We have Flatline. This will just make them 0/1. And because we're a Thassa's Oracle deck, we have Tainted Pact and Demonic Consultation. Okay, let's get into the sorceries. We have our Demonic Tutor to go get whatever card we need. A personal favorite of mine would Beseech the Mirror. What makes this a little bit better is the fact it has a additional cost called Bargain, where we can sacrifice a artifact, enchantment, or token. And if we did that, we get to search for any card, and if that card was mana value 4 or less, we get to cast that card without paying its mana cost. And because we are playing Narset Parter of Veils to punish our opponents for drawing cards, we have Windfall. This will force our opponents to discard their hand, and if Narset is out, our opponents are only going to draw 1 additional card. Now we have more, let's turn our opponent's creatures into basically weenies. We have Mass Diminish. This will turn all their creatures into 1/1s, but it also has Flashback, so we can do it again if we really need to. Now we have Asinine Antics. This is kind of similar because it'll attach a Cursed Roll enchantment to those creatures, and they will become 1/1s. But we can cast Asinine Antics for 2 colorless more as an instant. Now we have Feed the Swarm. That way we can deal with a opponent's enchantment if we really need to. Now we have some mass removal. So we have Black Sun Zenith. This will put -1/-1 counters on each creature. Because we're proliferating, we can just proliferate those counters in case we really need to kill very large creatures. And Black Sun Zenith will shuffle itself back in. Now we have Damnation. My personal favorite with Toxic Deluge. I love minus effects because it gets around indestructible. And similar to that, we have Blasphemous Edict. Instead of giving minus counters or -1s, this will force our opponents to sacrifice. Let's get into the artifacts. We have our Soul Ring, our Talisman of Dominance, our Thought Vessel as our mana rocks. I really like Thought Vessel in decks that we're going to be drawing lots of cards because you want to keep those cards in your hand. Now we have Sensei's Divining Top. This is going to help us with a whole bunch of other cards as well because we get to select whatever spells we really need to draw. We have lots of tokens. We have Skull Clamp. This is going to help us kill off those slug tokens. That way we can draw cards. We need to protect ourselves, so we need the One Ring. This will give us protection from everything once we cast it. And the One Ring is indestructible. And the One Ring will help us draw as many cards as possible every single turn. And because we're running Sensei's Divining Top, we have Bolas's Citadel. This will allow us to play lands and cast spells from the top of our library just by using our life total. And if we have 10 non-land permanents, we can make each opponent lose 10 life if we've created, let's say, 10 slug tokens. Now we have a very unique one for this deck. We have Counterspells. Counterspells is going to turn every single swamp into a 1/1 creature. You might be asking yourself, why do we want to do that? Because we're going to pair Counterspells with a very unique land that will affect our opponents from playing the game entirely. But I'll get to that in just a moment. Okay, let's get into the enchantments. All these enchantments are going to help us in many ways. So we have Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study. This is going to punish our opponents for just casting spells, because we're going to be drawing cards. Because we're playing Sensei's Divining Top, we have counterbalance. That way, no matter what our opponents play, we have the option of just straight up countering that spell. Now we have some enchantments that are going to synergize with everything dying. So we have the Meathook Massacre. When it enters, depending on how much mana we pay into Meathook Massacre, we're going to give each creature -X/-X. And then the static effect, whenever a creature we control is put into a graveyard, each opponent will lose a life. And whenever a creature a opponent controls is put into a graveyard, we get to gain life. We also have Black Market. That way, whenever any creature is put into a graveyard, we get to put charge counters on Black Market, and every single pre-combat main phase, we get to add 1 black mana for each charge counter. Because these are counters, we get to proliferate, and the fastest way to proliferate is with Inexorable Tide. Whenever we cast any spell, we get to proliferate. And we have a very, very fun win condition with Revel in Riches. Whenever any creature a opponent controls is put into a graveyard, we get to create treasure tokens, and then at the beginning of our upkeep, if we control 10 or more treasures, we win the game automatically. Okay, let's get into the land base. We have our Command Tower, our Polluted Delta, our Fabled Passage, so we can go get whatever basic land we need. Now we have our fetchable lands, so we have Watery Grave, Undercity Sewers. I love these Surveil lands because if it's a certain card on top of your library that you don't need, you can just put it into your graveyard. Now we have Fetid Pools. If we don't need the land, we can just pay 2 and cycle this and draw a card. We have our Battle Bond land with Morphic Pool, Gloom Lake Verge, Sunken Ruins. That way we get whatever color we really need. Our Choked Estuary. All we have to do is reveal an island or swamp, and this will enter untapped. I'm not the biggest fan of lands that enter the battlefield tapped. I'm sure you're not either. Now we have Drowned Catacombs. This will enter tapped unless we control an island or a swamp. Now we have Darkslick Shores as our speed land. Within the first 3 turns, it'll enter untapped. We got our Underground River. We do have our Scryland with Temple of the Sea. Now we have our Karoo land with Dimir Aqueduct. When this enters, we have to return a land back to our hand, but we're going to get value off this because we're just going to return a land, such as a Surveil land or some other land that has a enter the battlefield trigger. Now we have the Kamigawa lands. We have Takanuma, Abandoned Mire. We can discard this. It's called Channeling. We can mill 3 cards, and then we get to return a creature or planeswalker from our graveyard back to our hand. And this ability will cost 1 less for each legendary creature we control. Now we have Otawara. This can be played either offensively or defensively. We can bounce a artifact, creature, enchantment, or planeswalker. Now, if we need to exile our opponent's entire graveyard, we have Bojuka Bog. Now we have my personal favorite. We have Mystic Sanctuary. As long as this enters untapped, we get to return a instant and sorcery from our graveyard back on top of our library. Now we got some man lands. So we have Hall of Storm Giants. This will become a 7/7 giant creature with Ward 3. So it's just going to be a bigger creature that our opponents can't really deal with. Now we have Hive of the Eye Tyrant. This will become a 3/3 Beholder creature with Menace. So it's already hard to block. And when that creature attacks, we get to exile a card from that player's graveyard. Now, because we're running Counterspells, we are running Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth. This is going to turn every single land into a swamp. And because Counterspells will turn all swamps into 1/1 creatures, we get to kill our opponent's entire land base. But there's something else we can use Urborg with as well, such as Cabal Coffers. That way we can generate as much black mana as we need. Now we have Phyrexian Tower. This is going to allow us to sacrifice creatures to generate 2 black mana. And because Toxrill is a high costing commander, we have Command Beacon. All we need to do is sacrifice Command Beacon and we can return our commander back to our hand. Now, to deal with our opponent's creatures even more, we have Bezavith. That way, those creatures won't ever deal combat damage to us. Now, because we absolutely love drawing cards, we have Reliquary Tower. That way we can keep all these cards that we're going to draw in our hand. And because we like proliferation, we have Karn's Bastion. We can pay 4 and proliferate. We have 4 swamps and 4 islands. And that was the Commander deck tech for good old Gary the Snail. I really hope you guys enjoyed my take on Dimir Control. I know this can be a very expensive high-end deck, but don't let that discourage you. I'm just trying to showcase the most optimal builds possible. So if you guys have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. I'll leave the link to the deck list for Moxfield in the comments as well. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.